Anyway, borrowing basics here again. Y'all should all know that biogenetic engineering. When I say biogenetic, I mean biochemistry. I mean genetic manipulation because they like start breaking out to 50 billion categories and chemical engineering into the chemistry of materials of applicable use. And then quantum mechanic physics is my top three favorite category. And so my next one is how it's always been electronics, architecture and civil that deal with construction from the ground up, and freaking aviation and aeronautical has always been my favorite top classes. Material, I like it, but I wouldn't put it up there as the rest of them as the form of engineering. But in terms of trade, my favorite has always been mechanic, fuel, and water treatment. Always. Or agriculture. It's one of those. But anyway, this is organic. This is the basis of organic chemistry that deal with the atoms of organics. There are, in terms of basics of dealing with atoms, as in what you're looking for, there are atoms that are meant for everything, but in their specific category based on your standard, there are only certain things made for organic chemistry that deals with other materials or deals with making medicine or hold on, let me get my notes. No. Most of the stuff are organic metallic or pacemakers and freaking artificial hearts and stuff. They develop it, but they haven't put it in practical use yet. Anyway, atoms, we should also know that atom have a certain number attached to it, the atomic number, which is not the mass of the number, it is the amount of compounds or molecules within the atom. Now, a compound is multiple elements as an element, but a compound can also mean a multiple molecules. But to get a multiple molecules, you need multiple atoms. The atom is a single one atom. And the atomic number is the amount of protons. When you look at the periodic table, it is labeled by the amount of protons, not anything else. Proton is a form of materials inside the atom that is have a positive charge to it. Now, for whatever amount of protons, you need the same amount of electrons, which is the negative charge of it. This way you get a neutral charge of the atom. If the atom have either a positive charge or a negative charge and they're not equal, meaning protons is not the exact same number of electrons, it is a ion. If there's more electrons than protons, then it's a negative charge atom with a negative charge ion. It's the same thing with protons. Now, surrounding the atom itself is a electrical field, electrical cloud, and a shell. The shell is the electron location of that atom. The shell each have layers to the each have layers in a spherical around the atom, each going out. I'm going to just talk about three layers. Each of those shells have a certain amount of electrons in them. The very first shell have two electrons in them. Usually that's labeled 2e minus. Now, I'm going to say this, as further you go out from the atom, the greater the number of electron import shell there are. Now, I know I said earlier there are a certain amount of protons and electrons, usually they're equal, but they're not, then they'll have a charge. The reason why there are more electrons within each shell because the electrons are actually just parts of a bigger electron that give us the exact same number of protons. I'm going to another discussion about that in another video. Usually the label for electron dealing with atom is E minus, like I said. The very first layer of the orbital is 2e electrons, meaning 2 electrons. And when you go to the second shell, it's 8 electrons. When you go to the third shell, it's 18 electrons. Like further out you go. But within the orbitals, there are freaking electrons per each. In each of those electrons, have 2 per. So if the first shell with 2 electrons in it, that means there are 2 electrons. But in the second shell where there are 8 electrons, that means there are 16 electrons. Yeah, I know. And each of the electrons must have a spin that are opposite of each other. That way they can balance each other out. Now, in terms of shell, shell is the major layer of the outside of the atom where the electrons are. Orbitals are near the exact location of where the electrons at, but you cannot determine by your standard the exact location of an electron, which is called the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Now, there are two types of orbitals. There's the s orbital, which is the shape of the electron, and then there's the p orbital. P orbital, based on groups, usually have 2 per group, so it's 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and then 2, 2 with no 2s. Congrats. Yeah, I know. I get crazy. So let's break that down for y'all. And that's pretty much it. I don't want to go into too much detail. You should know that a p orbital is shaped like a P or shaped like an A, and S orbital is shaped like an S or a circle. I'm going to put my notes down at the bottom of it, but I don't want to blow your brain out. Congrats. So I'm just going to give a rundown. In organic chemistry, you deal with organic atoms. You deal with all atoms, but solely meant for the purpose of organic chemistry. Atoms are labeled by their atomic number, which is always the protons. Protons are positive charge, electrons are negative charge, and neutrons are no charge. Now, for a atom to be neutral charge, which is the most consistent thing, you need to have the same amount of proton as electrons. And so wherever the amount of proton is the same amount of electron. If there are opposite of proton electrons or odd number amongst them, then it become a ion atom, and wherever the dominant one with the most number, it becomes that form of charge. Electrons are based in the outer version of the atom nucleus itself, and that is the shell of the atom or the layer of electrons. Further you go out from the atom or nucleus itself, as the greater amount of electron and the greater electron charge. The orbital is more the exact location of the electrons. Electron use E minus as in atoms. 2e is usually the very first shell or the shell itself where the orbital is. An orbital is the exact location of the atoms or near the exact location. There are 2 electrons per shell or per orbital. P orbitals have 2 per 2 by 2, which means there are more MPs than the freaking S's. And regardless, each of those groups, electrons will spin in the opposite direction of each other to help maintain the balance amongst them. Congrats. I'm out.